Welcome to our next instalment where we are meeting the divorce experts. Today we're talking about the financial side of the divorce. And to help us, we've got Victoria Clapham, investment manager and co-founder at Manor Investment, and Nathan Adam, a financial planner with Raymond James, London City Point. Both are based in London and both have sets of skills that can be vital on divorces where there's plenty of assets. Often couples who begin the divorce process know that the legal bills could be one thing, but don't understand the full financial scrutiny and upheaval that your finances can go through on divorce. Thankfully, we have Victoria and Nathan here to help us understand the impacts on the finances through divorce and to provide some information on the services they can provide to help you through it. So thank you both so much for joining me today. Why don't you both go through the services you can provide and with some background on your experience with helping divorcing or separating clients? Victoria, why don't you go first?
Sure. Well, thanks for having us. Delighted to speak on your webinar. So as you kindly mentioned, I'm an investment manager and co-founder of Manor Investment Management. And here we look after a really wide range of clients from private individuals to trusts, charities, pensions and ISAs. And we really aim to achieve strong investment returns over the long term, with the client being at the forefront of everything we do. We design bespoke investment portfolios. We feel that no two clients are the same, so no two portfolios look the same either. So that client relationship is really key to how we work. Our clients can therefore sort of rest easy, knowing that the money is working for them and provides that extra peace of mind. But as we have such close relationships with our clients, we see them journey through life as a, trusted advisor for them. And, this of course includes relationship breakdowns and divorce.
And Nathan?
Thank you. So I'm a financial planner. I work out of Raymond James, London City Point. Effectively, my role is to basically sit down with the client, understand what their objectives are, what they'd like to achieve, and then taking a holistic view of their entire situation. So whether that's looking at their pension situations, what ISAs they've got, whether they want to put in place any trust arrangements, whether they're the beneficiaries of any trusts, and then just sitting down and really trying to get a holistic view of their whole situation. And then where I add value, I try to I think it's important when talking about finances to try and keep things as simple as possible. So I like to really sort of basically set out to a client, in the simplest way possible, how they can achieve their aims. I've helped clients at various different stages of divorce. So I suppose with a client who's currently going through a divorce, I'd look at what the proposed split is. And then I try and speak with them, and along with the solicitors, we'd work together to basically ensure that, either they're giving up a fair proportion of their assets or whether they're going to receive a fair proportion of the assets. And then also, when I've worked with clients who have actually been through a divorce, it's sort of giving that guiding hand basically through, such a turbulent time, and basically, almost reassuring them that what they've got is able to still achieve their goals.
Yeah, and that's kind of leads me on nicely to my next question, really. So yeah, divorce, as we were saying, is like this major financial change. What would be your top tips for getting your affairs in order after a divorce, after your finances have been changed completely? What would you say is your first? Well, in an ideal world, what would your ideal client do as their first step? Nathan, I guess why don't you go first on that one, as something leads on to what you were talking about before?
Sure. Basically, I think the most important thing is actually the client understanding, either what they've received or what they've gained, or what they've given up, sorry. And then basically using that as a basis to then say, well, okay, your life has gone through this change. So now how are you going to adjust, what you've been spending, like where you're living? I mean, the common worry after a couple divorces is, where am I going to live? How much am I able to spend on purchasing a new house? And all all of these things and just trying to, paint that picture that you are going to be okay. You will be able to still achieve some of your goals, or in some circumstances, it can, involve quite difficult conversations where you say, like, you've lived this lifestyle before. Unfortunately, you may need to make some changes, and actually being able to sit down, and then the client would much rather hear that than when you get to a point, 10 years down the line where they say, oh, hang on a second, like, we've made some mistakes here. So it's trying to provide that guiding hand, but also, basically ensuring that the client is realistic in what they want to achieve.
Yeah, totally. That sounds like a really valuable service. And yeah, Victoria, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but people, I mean, there's always a stigma about talking about money in whatever scenario you're in, whether that's, how to split a bill at the end of a night, or in these situations, there can be an even bigger stigma talking about it, and people might not be willing to open up about it. So for couples that are still together, that may find talking about their finances difficult, how would you try and approach that topic? And how can having someone like you in place kind of help dispel that awkwardness so that they know that they can come and talk to you about it?
I think having somebody like me, an independent, objective, trusted third party can really help guide those awkward conversations. And I just think, like anything in life, the more it's talked about and discussed openly, the more it's normalised. It's really, really useful to start those conversations early and just to keep talking about it, because, of course, money issues can come up at any point in a relationship, from moving in together to buying a house, deciding to have children or not, choosing when you want to retire. So, it's completely normal to have different attitudes and approaches to money. One half might be cautious and saving every penny, and the other person's approach might be, well, you can't take it with you, so live for the moment. And I think in reality, no one's ever going to agree on everything, but it's working out where those differences in opinion are, and that can help lead to compromise. I think having a plan in place and goal setting can be really helpful. And just on that subject, I read this great report from Fidelity that said that 1 in 5 couples identified money as their greatest relationship challenge. And actually 1 in 4 individuals were often frustrated by their partner's habit. So, learning to be transparent and communicative can be a real game changer, I think.
No, it's so true. I think it goes to show why the finances are one of, you're either arguing about the finances or the children most of the time in divorces, and that really goes to show that that is one of the biggest points of contention for people. So I think, having, advisors like you guys in place, but far before the divorce happens, you're encouraging those discussions to happen earlier on, and then hopefully helping you if the time ever comes where you think about separating. Yeah, Nathan, I wondered, do you have any thoughts on that you wanted to add before we move on?
I don't really have anything to add. I suppose just, as Victoria said, when you have that sort of trusted third party involved, it can help with sort of easing some of the nerves about talking about money. I mean, it's a very sort of traditional thing, isn't it? That some people like to keep their assets separately, and, there's a little bit of a disclosure gap. But then I think by having that trusted advisor in place, and actually, as part of our processes, in order to be able to do what we do so effectively, we request always that, we need to essentially know everything so that we can actually, effectively do our jobs properly. Because otherwise, if people aren't disclosing things, then it can materially change the advice that's being given.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because that's such a massive thing for us as well, the financial disclosure part of the divorce. And I think it's something that people don't really realise is going to happen when they say they're about to split up, that all of their finances is going to be checked over rigorously. So yeah, it's definitely and we've had cases where where we can converge the two situations where we've had ones where there has been no financial planner in place and ones where there has. And it's just so helpful to have someone there that you can call and say, oh, we need this piece of information, or what's going on with this pension, what's going on with this SIP, what's going on with this, you know, and there's someone there that knows it. And I think those clients who do have those in place, if they've got a lot of assets, they tend to find it a lot easier because the burden's not all on them to disclose all of that. So yeah, I think that's a really, really helpful for us as well as the clients. So just to go on to talking about pensions, because I know, again, has been mentioned previously, it can sometimes be sort of the thought of forgotten about asset on divorce, because people are often really concerned about what's happening with the family home and tend to sometimes forget about the pensions. We had a talk recently with Reece Taylor where he was talking about pensions and gave us some fantastic advice on that. So if you haven't watched that one, recommend watching that. But has this been your experience as well with pensions? Do people kind of think I'm putting a bit of money in the way to it and they tend to forget about them? Or what's your experience, Victoria, if you want to?
Yeah, I'd happily take that. I think it's very common to fear talking about pensions. You know, I mean, during a divorce, you know, if you're in the thick of it, you're sort of surviving day to day, coping with what's being thrown at you, you know, looking far into the future, into retirement can be, well, it can feel like, you know, a different lifetime and totally overwhelming. And to your point as well, you know, it's those sort of less visible assets that can easily be forgotten about, and also their importance to not be understood. I think pensions, sometimes I think people think they're, you know, too complicated. It's sort of this mystical amount of money, you know, they don't realise that actually they are invested as well. And it's that fear of the unknown. So, you know, we just try to tackle that by making things more simple, you know, don't use jargon, try to break down the barriers and talk about future, you know, can you picture it, and what sort of lifestyle, and, you know, would you like, and, you know, what does financial freedom mean to you, and those sorts of things.
And what sort of alternatives to a pension would you have in mind? I don't know what sort of products would you be recommending to someone if they'd, you know, potentially got a big pot of money on divorce and they wanted to, you know, think about it in the longer term financial aspect. Like, what sort of recommendations or options are there out there that for people that don't know, they would think that pension was the only thing out there for them?
Sure, there are lots of options, and I think that's why, you know, getting to know the client is so key. Their financial needs, their existing asset, along with sort of their, you know, attitude and approach to risk and capacity for risk, and even softer factors such as their ethical views. You know, income and outgoings and budgeting would be the first starting point, and it's always important to have cash along with other assets, because, you know, every person needs enough for regular outgoings, and, you know, sort of a cash buffer for unforeseen events, and actually cash, you know, the days of 0% interest rates for now are over. So cash can be earning interest for clients as well. So then that's sort of, you know, short, medium term, and then longer term assets. We could look at investing in a portfolio of investments, but they really need to be seen as a sort of 3 to 5 year and longer pot. We try to invest tax efficiently, things like ISAs, and using whatever tax allowances we have for us, things like capital gains tax. But you know, the stock market is quite attractive, especially for producing income. The FTSE yields nearly, the top 100 companies rather in the UK, nearly 4% at the moment, and there's products like bonds as well. So yeah, sort of fitting something around the person really to achieve what they're after.
Great. Yeah, well, it sounds, yeah, like there's loads of options out there.
Mhm.
And Nathan, on your work, in your work on pension transfer advice, which I understand you've helped with before, with other divorcing clients that you might have had, what's the sort of service that you can provide, and yeah, how has that played out previously?
I mean, effectively, just to speak a little bit to what you were talking about previously, I mean, a
Mm,
pension tends to, by the time a person's sort of bit by retirement age, a pension is usually a person's second largest asset after their home.
mm,
So I think there's got to be a real focus on giving advice around that area. And
yeah.
there is this real almost illusion on how complex pensions actually are. I think
Mm,
it's not helpful that every year there's different changes to the legislation, and various things are brought in and taken out again. So as a financial planner, the role is to really sort of try and simplify that process for people and
yeah.
get an understanding. So financial planners have access to some great tools. So one tool in particular that I love using is called cash flow modeling. So
Mm,
I can actually sit down with a client and I can say, well, you've inherited this pension. We can actually look at, how whether you want to make contributions to that pension, how it's going to look sort of when you do approach retirement age, or for those who are at retirement age, trying to work out basically a sustainable withdrawal rate for that as well.
mm-hmm.
Um, and also with, there are various different types of pensions, and I know, they go to audit and as part of your processes, and it's trying to basically, from my side of things, is looking at that report and then saying, well, a person's not necessarily going to purchase an annuity with a pension, so how can
Mm,
that be factored in as well? And it's just trying to really, what does the client want and how are they going to spend that money, and then what's going to be the best thing for them.
yeah, of course. Um, and do you have any, what would you say is the most common misconception about pensions, and how would you like to dispel it? I mean, if that's not too big of a question.
um, I suppose I think there's still quite a common misconception that you need to purchase an annuity with your pension fund, and that
Mm,
it's the savings fund that you've locked away for your whole life, and then you get to retirement and then you purchase an annuity with it. But since pensions freedoms were introduced in 2016, there's been a real shift. So effectively, the way that I like to describe it to clients is that your pension is just another savings pot that you have access to. Like, so yeah, you can access it right now at age 55 onwards. That's going up to 57 from April 2028. But it is this
mm,
pot of money that you do have access to, and you can withdraw from it flexibly, depending on the type of pension it is. But we always recommend that, especially with people living longer now as well, that you do seek advice when you are coming up to those sorts of retirement ages, and don't just see it as something which you can pick money from as and when.
yeah, no, that's really useful advice. What about you, Victoria? I guess same question. What misconceptions do you often see about pensions?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Nathan's comments. Really, is that they are so much more flexible now. You know that the amount you can take, when you can take it. It's a really useful tool actually, and also a useful tool for sort of inheritance tax planning as well. You know, self-invested personal pensions are outside of the estate currently. Um,
Mm,
for inheritance tax. So, some clients choose to draw on potentially taxable assets first, those cash deposits I was talking about, or perhaps, investments in a taxable space, and leave that pension as a sort of inheritance tax planning tool for children, perhaps, or beneficiaries. So yeah, it's sort of that flexibility, I think, is the main misconception.
nice. Okay, that's yeah, super helpful as well. Um, so yeah, I wanted to talk about potentially a more specific example. So in cases we have what's called the Duxbury tables, and you watching may have heard your family lawyer or me or Sarah talk about these. It's when you're capitalising the maintenance that you will be paying into one lump sum payment, and that you can go through the table and you can see if this person lived to this long, however old they are, what that payout would be. And this, I mean, since they were introduced, they're obviously increasingly common. If there was, big lump sum payout, either in the form of a Duxbury fund or just as a lump sum on divorce, what say they were awarded? This is just a figure plucked out of thin air, 250,000. What and that's sent to them straight after the financial order is sorted. What sort of options would they have at their disposal? And if they came to you and they said they were in this situation, what would be your first line of advice? I don't know who wants to go first. Victoria, maybe this is more of an investment-y question. So maybe you.
Yeah, so I was touched a bit on this earlier, but first and foremost, it's assessing their financial position and what it is they need from this money. If it is a regular income to sort of supplement their lifestyle and things, then yeah, an investment portfolio could work really well, and making sure it is tax efficient using things like ISAs. But again, having that cash buffer for unforeseen events, and so an investment portfolio would work really well to create an income that they needed. Also because it's diversified. It's you're not reliant on any one particular area for the whole thing to sort of make progress and grow. I think often the conversations we come against, if you like, with clients when they have a pot of money is, should I invest it in the stock market or should I buy a rental property? And of course, these conversations are personal to that individual and their preferences, but there are a lot of advantages for an investment portfolio, things like the fact that it can be more tax efficient, whereas you can't put a property into an ISA. It's flexible in terms of taking money out, whereas obviously you can't simply sell a kitchen if you have a property. So yeah, it's quite a flexible way to earn an income and hopefully grow the money as well for the foreseeable.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And kind of, I guess the inverse question for you, Nathan, say someone had been ordered to pay a big lump sum like that, and they needed to rearrange their finances, and they came to you and they said, oh, I don't know, where am I going to find this money? How am I going to pay it out? What am I going to do now? What would your advice be, and how would you be able to help?
Yeah, so it'd be sitting down with them and basically saying, well, how much money do you need? And then it'd be looking at, well, where can we take that money from? So, a client might have assets, in an ISA, in a pension, in other investments which are outside of those tax advantage wrappers. So it'd be looking at different ways to structure their income. And then, this is where I'd sort of hand it back to Victoria in a way, because I'd be saying, well, you might need someone to actually look at what the underlying assets in your portfolio are. So, for instance, that person may not have actually had a requirement previously to withdraw any money from those assets, and they were just left to grow. Whereas perhaps you're getting to a point now where you might need to take some money from those portfolios to supplement, if you're paying out maintenance, for instance. So you may need to then speak to an investment manager and say, well, your portfolio at the moment is invested for growth, but maybe we'll switch into some other assets which can pay you an income.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Thank you. And to kind of, I guess we touched on this a little earlier about planning for your children, because that's for divorcing couples, kind of their biggest worry. Is there going to be enough money for me and my kids? How are we going to make sure that we're all okay following this massive financial upheaval? What would how would you approach someone to ensure that they could provide for their children both during their lifetime and sort of on death? Like, what are the ways that people can make sure that they have that reassurance there that they're going to be providing for their children? I guess, yeah, Victoria, maybe you want to start.
So a debt-free fund can be used to invest for the benefit of children in structures such as trusts and bear trusts, which I'm sure the wonderful solicitors at Winckworth Sherwood can help with, especially if the child isn't old enough to take ownership, and you can build a nest egg for the children. And junior ISAs are also a really great saving tool for minors as well.
Yeah, Nathan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I just sort of say, after going through a divorce, I mean, a couple of key considerations are, you need to rewrite a will, as your previous one will have been invalid. And then it's also looking at, on your pensions, revisiting who's actually nominated to receive them in the event of your death, because as a pension is a trust in its own right, it will be the trustees of that scheme will tend to operate off the death benefit nomination form. So you need to, again, revisit that. And then sort of any life cover you've had in place as well, which may have been put into a trust for inheritance tax purposes. Again, looking at sort of who the trustees are, who are the beneficiaries, and then maybe reviewing that as well. And then in terms of, just adding to what Victoria said, providing while still alive, you can set up a junior ISA where you're able to pay in £9,000 a year. You've also got gifting allowances that you could use as well. So you're able to give £3,000 free of IHT each year, and you can carry that forward as well. So there are lots of different areas in which you can, ensure that you and your children will be provided for both in life and in death.
Great, that's super helpful. So yeah, can we just talk about another thing that's a main consideration for people when they get divorced? Because obviously being married allows a lot of tax benefits. Can you talk a little bit on the tax point and the tax changes that happen to people after they get divorced, and how maybe people can get caught out if they don't realise that they're losing the benefit of those that tax position where they were in previously? Don't know who wants to jump in first.
I'll start. I mean, it's a typical one that we've seen before is where someone receives a large investment portfolio, and all of a sudden they're starting to have to think about, am I paying capital gains tax when I'm taking money out of this portfolio? Or am I paying a dividends tax? And then potentially with those incomes being added onto, any employment income they may have, they might actually jump up a tax band. And then there's also considerations on, child benefit that they may receive as well. So it's part of our job to really keep an eye on what the new income position is, to ensure that they're not having their child benefit allowance tapered away and they're losing that money. Or, it's maybe in the event that they are straddling tax bands, looking at perhaps making a pension contribution to try and gain some tax relief back and bring you back within, either the higher rate band or the basic rate band even. So it's just, it's our job to basically keep an eye on that situation and explain to the client, what impacts either receiving a large payout might have on them.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else to add, Victoria, on that point?
No, absolutely agree. It's sort of finessing the situation to that individual, and also, the sort of just general transition from years of mutual financial planning and splitting costs and, expenditure to being a single income household. It can be quite scary. So I think having that support and advice and plan in place, I think, gives clients a lot of confidence.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, part of this whole webinar series has been about talking about the holistic approach to divorce, which is why we're speaking to you guys today, because you play an important role in those divorces where they have enough assets where we need financial planners involved as well. Would you ever get the tax advice? Would you recommend that in certain cases where there was as you were saying, Nathan, potential CGT liability that was arising, or is that something that you can consider as well, or would you also need to get a tax expert in to help with those considerations?
I hate saying this, but it often depends.
No,
If you're talking about standard use of capital gains tax allowances or claiming back pensions, high rate tax relief, for instance, then that's something that financial planners can help with. But then if you're starting to look into more complex situations where it's not a straightforward capital gains tax bill that you've got to pay, maybe you're looking at unlisted assets, for instance, things of that ilk, then I definitely suggest looking at a professional tax advisor as well.
Sometimes it's quite useful for a client to have that sort of team behind them. They're the financial advisor, their investment manager, and their solicitor and accountant. It's sort of these are the people in my corner, and making sure everything's working well.
Yeah, definitely. And we've been speaking to divorce coaches and and relationship therapists who help with the emotional side as well. And so, if you've got this sort of entourage, it can help, ease the pressure, because for one person to take on all that, it's a hell of a lot. So that's all been really informative. I guess to end on, if I'm not putting you on the spot too much, what would be your key takeaway that you would want for people to take away from this discussion today? What's the main thing that you want to stand out in their brains, the key piece of advice that you'd want to give?
I'll let Victoria go first.
I think
so you get time to think.
Hopefully how there are professionals out there to help you, and you don't have to feel like you're conquering everything on your own. With a good plan in place and the right help, it's all very conquerable.
Great.
I just say think of it as almost like a completely fresh start, and going through that sort of review of where you're going to be at when everything is resolved, I think, and then delving into detail on all of your assets, like your pensions, your wills, any trust arrangements, life cover. Just starting from point one again effectively can actually massively help down the line, as opposed to sort of leaving it. I'd always suggest getting advice basically at the earliest possible point.
Definitely. No, they're very useful words. Thank you both so much. Was there anything else that you feel as though we haven't covered today? You're all happy?
No, I think it was great. It's really interesting conversation.
All right, well, thank you again both so much. We'll be linking the other talks that we've done with our experts in the webpage, so you can go and find those there. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Bye.